Starting us right at number 10, we have the Otterbein Cemetery. It was during the 1840s that James Henry was faced with a dilemma. He had been courting two women, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He couldn't decide which one to marry until one day, while going home, Henry ended up falling asleep on the horse he was riding on. The horse would then stop in front of Mary's house. James saw this as a sign and married Mary shortly after. As a wedding gift, James gave Mary the horse that led him there. Their love was so strong, but short-lived, when Mary died in 1845. She was then buried in Otterbein Cemetery, and as fate would have it, Henry would go back and court the other girl, Rachel. But shortly after their new marriage, people began noticing a strange outline of a bloody horseshoe on his late wife's tombstone. James took this as Mary's objection to the new marriage. And perhaps this was true, because days after, strange sounds and sightings were reported in the cemetery. James Henry would be found in his barn, dead, with a mark of a horseshoe visibly on his forehead. Creeping at our number 9 spot, we have Satan's Hollow. Beyond the woods, in a quiet blue ash community, some say exists a portal to hell named Satan's Hollow. Being part of an old sewage system, the tunnels are said to be haunted by a shadow man and other angry spirits. Supernatural markings are seen all over the tunnel walls. Deep inside the tunnels are a supposed altar room where they would commit violent rituals, including sacrificing animals and even humans. Over the years, several ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have visited this site, claiming to have communicated with spirits. Coming in at number 8, we have Athens Asylum. This mental asylum stood from 1874 up until 1993. However, some pretty scary stuff occurred within these walls. Patients were mistreated, physically abused, not fed, strapped to their beds, and even lobotomized, which caused many patients to suffer from life-changing side effects and disabilities. One particular patient named Margaret Schilling went missing in 1979 for 42 days. Her corpse would be later found in an abandoned area in the hospital. The odd thing was that her body was found naked, with her clothes folded neatly beside her, and then her body began rotting so bad that it left a permanent stain behind that could still be seen to this day. In attempts to hide the stain, workers found it impossible to clean up the imprint, and now it's said that the abused patients of this asylum still haunt the building, including the spirit of Margaret. At our number 7 spot, we have the Bloody Bridge. In the 1850s, a bridge that crosses the Miami-Erie Canal was the site of a horrific murder. The story begins with a couple named Bill Jones and Minnie Warren. They started off head over heels over one another, so it was a big surprise when Minnie ended the relationship all of a sudden. Bill was devastated. Meanwhile, the girl seemed to have moved on pretty quickly and began dating a man by the name of Jack Billings instead, and Bill would become a rage-fueled person with full intent to plot his revenge. So on one cold night in 1852, he waited near the bridge that crossed the canal. When the new couple was walking over the bridge, he jumped out of nowhere, slicing Jack's head clean off using an axe, and startled Minnie, which made her fall from the bridge, drowning soon after. This would cause many locals to name it the Bloody Bridge. At our number 6 spot, we have the Loveland Frogmen. This is not so much a scary urban legend, but rather weird, so I couldn't ignore it. The Loveland Frogmen are 4 feet bipedal frogs with a leathery skin and webbed feet. I know, it sounds super silly, but the people who actually encountered the Loveland Frogmen didn't find them funny by any means. Instead, they would shoot farmers, businessmen, and even policemen on sight. One report even said a policeman shot and killed one. Everyone's description of the creature was the same, except the height, making many to believe that there are more than one frogman out there. In the hump of our list, we have the melonheads. In the suburbs of Michigan, Ohio, locals fear of humanoids called melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. The legend goes that a doctor named Crow and his wife lived in the woods of Ohio. In a nearby orphanage, he convinced them to kidnap and then conduct experiments on a group of orphan children suffering from hydrocephalus, a condition that caused the kid's head to swell to 3 times the normal size. The tests were both malicious and an ill-fated attempt to save them. These experiments would cause even more swelling and give them an appearance of a melon head. After days of torture, the kids would decide to kill Dr. Crow, and it's said that these kids still survive off the nearby land, only emerging at nights. Taking our number 4 spot, we have the Defiance Werewolf. In the summer of 1972, the people of Defiance, Ohio were claiming that they were being terrorized by a lone werewolf. The sightings of this werewolf would be typically at nights nearby the railroad tracks. The beast was reported to be 7 to 9 feet tall, very hairy, and wielding a club. It said that 2 men were working on the tracks at night, One of the two men, Ted Davis, would report to police that he was attacked by a half-man, half-dog creature. Luckily for locals, after the summer, the beast almost seemed to vanish out of existence. But the story still lingers, and perhaps a werewolf is still out there, hiding. All the way at number 3, we have the Gore Orphanage. In Vermilion, Ohio, there's a story about an orphanage. During the 1800s, a mysterious fire broke out in a building, trapping all inside, leading to at least 50 deaths. The town was horrified by the event and refused to allow a replacement orphanage to be built on the site. Ohio residents wanted nothing more than just to forget about the tragedy and move on. Out of sight, out of mind, or so they thought. The fire itself is said to have left a stain on the area forever, with reports saying that if you try and approach the old orphanage, you'll be met with many children ghosts roaming around the land and running in the forest. The whereabouts of the remains of the orphanage are never clearly shared, and it appears that the location will forever be a mystery. However, there is a road called Gore Orphanage Road in Ohio, so I think it would be best to start there if you want to see some child apparitions. Here at number 2, we have the Cry Baby Bridge. In Salem, Ohio, there is a bridge just off of Egypt Road. Over the years, this bridge has collected many terrifying stories. But the stories are similar in the sense that it involves a mother and a baby child. Sometime in the 1970s, a young couple decided to picnic near the bridge with their baby. They slowly got distracted by the surroundings and by each other that they didn't notice the baby wandering off away from them. It was not until the baby began to cry, the couple realized their mistake and quickly chased after the sound of their baby. They were too late. The baby had fallen into the water and passed away. In an attempt to save the baby, but mostly devastated by her loss, the mother decided to jump into the water and met the same fate as their baby. Now legend has it that if you go to this bridge, you can hear the ghostly cries of a baby coming underneath the bridge. Taking our number 1 spot of our list, we have Helltown, Ohio. Boston Mills, now known as Helltown, was bought out by the US government to make way for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. However, rumor has it that this town was closed down because of an accident chemical leak, causing citizens to mutate. To this day, the town remains completely abandoned. However, people who visited the area have reported seeing many disfigured, mutated people hiding throughout the area. And to make matters worse, apparently there is a satanic church located at the town center. The area is littered with even more dark legends, including an old abandoned school bus where a series of murders took place in. It is said that if you peek into the windows, you can see the ghosts of the kids or even the killer behind it. At a number 10 spot, we have the Torch Lake Monster. This one is pretty much well known all over Michigan, but for those who don't know, the tale of the Torch Lake Monster dates back to the early 1960s and 70s. Obviously, it takes place in Torch Lake, which is located in North Michigan, and it also is the second largest lake in the state. A fisherman and coach by the name of Dave Foley is credited with spotting the creature first and telling the stories of it since he worked by the lake for a while. Legend goes that the giant creature has a lizard's body, the head of a cat, one brown eye, and one blue eye, along with slimy green skin. The lake is approximately 285 feet deep, which makes what lies underneath much more scary and worrisome. Nighttime is when this creature is said to arise from the depths. At this time, many swimmers and boats go missing, only to wash the shore with no evidence of its demise. At a number 9 spot, we have the Singing Sands of Beat Gris. Located just past Lac La Belle, Michigan, is a beautiful white sandy beach known as Beat Gris. In a direct translation, this means gray beast, and that's because a large gray creature was said to have inhabited the area many years ago, but that's not even the story I'm going to talk about. Local legends claim that the pure white sand of the beach sings by pressing down your palms on it, or it barks when you strike it. The sound is said to be the voice of a Native American maiden who lost her lover when he drowned in the Great Lakes, and now she calls him on shore. The sand is said to lose its magical singing power when it's removed from the beach. Now visitors claim to hear the singing sounds, but as many try to bring the sound back home, they are met with years of unlimited bad luck, which lead many to bring it back to the beach to allow it to sing again. Other than sand that makes sounds, at a number 8 spot with the Belle Isle's Lady in White. In Detroit, Michigan, there's an island called Belle Isle. This 982-acre island is used for picnics, hikes, and home of the only marble lighthouse. Other than that, everything else on this island is shrouded in mystery and up for speculation. Legend of the island follows the story of a chief's daughter and a haunting bridge. The chief was concerned that his daughter's beauty would attract vast amounts of suitors, so to combat this, he made a deal with the snake goddess of the island. island. The chief asked the goddess to protect his daughter. The goddess would agree, but not for nothing. She would ask for the daughter to live out the rest of her days on the island to protect it, never being able to leave it. And to this day, the daughter is said to stay on this island and walk it, with many visitors reporting that she would try to lure them into the forest by telling them that she is looking for someone and just needs help. She supposedly takes her victims to the bridge to drown them, and it's said that if you go on this bridge and honk 3 times, she will appear just before your eyes. At number 7 spot, with the Nain Rouge. It's said that since the city of Detroit was founded in Michigan, bad luck has befallen the area. This is all because of the devilish red imp known as the Nain Rouge had cursed the entire city. Local folklore suggests that the Detroit's founder, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, was warned by a fortune teller that he would come face to face with the Nain Rouge and to treat him with the utmost respect and attention. Except this information came straight this ear and right out the other, because when he finally met with this creature, he hit it with his crane and told it to stay out of his way. This is when the angry Nain Rouge cursed the city of Detroit and Cadillac. Shortly after this, Cadillac would lose his fortune and move back to France, but misfortune still occurred in the city. It's said that in all disastrous events that happened in Detroit, the Nain Rouge could be spotted just before all of them. For example, in 1763, 50 British soldiers perished from Native Americans, after which the Nain Rouge could be seen dancing in the aftermath in joy. Then in the surrender of the war in 1812, the Nain was blamed again for its presence. It had also been seen during Detroit's riots of 1967 and 1976's ice storm that caused electricity to go out for days. At a number 6 spot, with the Masonic Temple. Currently standing as the largest Masonic temple in the world, it also stands as one of the most haunted places in all of Michigan. The temple, designed by George D. Mason, is an imposing Gothic structure at the corner of Bagg Street, later Temple Street, and 2nd Avenue across from Cass Park. The temple has over 1,000 rooms, secret stairways, and concealed passages, but unfortunately Mason would go a little too far in this construction, where it would cause him to go bankrupt, eventually losing his wife in the process. His depression slowly kicked in, and then he would jump off the roof of this temple to his death. And to this day, security guards claim to see old George's ghost climbing those steps to the rooftop. Visitors also reported many noises such as doors and windows being slammed shut. They also see moving shadows and experience cold spots all around the area, all while feeling as if they're being watched by something. Right in the hub of our list, we have the Michigan Triangle. Well, guess Michigan has their own version of Bermuda's Devil Triangle, and it contains just as much unexplained phenomena as Bermuda. The triangle is from Manawak, Wisconsin to Ludington to Benton Harbor in Michigan. It was in early spring 1937 when Captain Donner was just managing his freighter ship called the O.S. McFarland through these icy waters. He was so tired, so he decided to go to sleep and asked for one of the crewmates to wake him up when they approached shore. As they did, they noticed his room was locked, so they looked around, but nothing. They then kicked the door down and found that he vanished with no signs whatsoever. Now the triangle claims the lives of many ships and planes just like Bermuda. People have also cited the O.S. McFarland, but as they try to get a closer look, it disappears into the waters. An odd thing about this place is when that divers go to check the wreckages of ships and planes, they notice that everything is still intact, including the bodies of the deceased and the ship as a whole. This is by far the scariest triangle because there is no way around it other than land. So basically there's no point in traveling in Michigan's Great Lakes. At our number 4 spot is Hell's Bridge. Back in the early 1900s, an old deranged man named Elias Friss led a group of kids to the bridge and proceeded to murder each and every single one of them, slowly throwing them into the river below. Eventually he was caught and hung by the townspeople. Before he passed away, he made a confession claiming that he did this because he was possessed by the devil and they told him to do it. To this day, a lot of visitors to the bridge hear the screams and the cries from the children just before they pass away. People have also said that when they get home from this place, they find bruises on their body as if someone was reaching out to grab them or hit them. The worst part is that if you walk on this bridge at night, you can feel hands below you as if they're grabbing you from the river below. And at the end of the bridge, you might encounter Elias as a dark figure with glowing eyes, so you won't miss him in the dead of night. In more lesser known news, apparently you're able to sell your soul to the devil by meeting the devil in the middle of this bridge. I mean, it's called Hell's Bridge. What else did we expect? At our number 3 spot, we have the Dogman. The Dogman is described as a 7-foot tall, amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like creature, and he has the head of a dog with the body and torso of a human. Ever since its original sighting in 1887, many more sightings were spotted all over Michigan. It's primarily spotted in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. Back to its original sighting back in 1887. This is when the Dogman was discovered by 2 lumberjacks who saw this creature in the distance. Things got a little more concerning when in 1937, Robert Forney was attacked by 5 wild dogs, describing that of one of the dogs allegedly stood up like a bipedal and was significantly larger than all the other dogs. This legend got more popular when disc jockey Steve Cook recorded a song called The Legend, which describes the Michigan's Dogman. Although the artist claims it was made for an April Fool's joke, this kickstarted the entire legend and sightings of the Dogman would only rise after after the song was released. At a number 2 spot with Melonhead. Locals' fear of humanoids called the Melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, Melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. Legend goes that Melonheads reside around Felt Mansion, which is home to Dora Felt, who is an American inventor. The Melonheads were said to be the children suffering from hydrocephalus, which causes your head to expand in some cases. They were located at the Junction Insane Asylum near the home, and it's said that they endured months and months of abuse, and that one day they decided to escape and run into the forest of Michigan, where they became animal-like and very feral. Many of these Melonheads are said to be looking for the doctor who failed to care for them in order to take his life. At a number 1 spot, we have Eloy Psychiatric Hospital. Located in Westland, Michigan, it was named after Detroit's postmaster Elois Davik. In 1839, it started as a poorhouse and a farm where the poor, the sick, and the needy would go for shelter and work. As time went on, the poorhouse transitioned into a psychiatric asylum and hospital. The buildings were self-sufficient, even having their own police. They were even one of the first hospitals in the world to use x-rays for diagnosis, so at least one good thing came out of here. At its peak, the place housed over 10,000 patients and over 2,000 staff members. After its closure in 1984, the hospital's abandoned grounds are said to have a few patients still left inside of it. Ghost patients, that is. There have been reports of people finding medical waste and other strange items. Some have reported finding jars containing human body parts, as well as documents outlining strange medical procedures. Coming in at number 10, we have 13 Curves. This is a very dangerous road in Marcellus, New York, named the 13 Curves. Over the past 60 years since its construction, this road claimed the lives of many drivers from unfortunate accidents. None are more notorious than the story of a couple on their wedding day. Drivers claim they see a young woman dressed in a bloody white wedding gown walking along the road looking for her groom. All of the accidents on this road are said to be associated with this one woman, since many of the survivors of these accidents claim that the last thing they saw before crashing was in fact this woman in white. This story is very similar to La Llorona if you guys remember my past videos. That is in the Texas video. How the woman passed away in the first place remains a complete mystery, but some claim that on their wedding night, the couple drove on these winding roads, but on one of the curves, they lost control and ended up in a nearby creek, with both of them passing away. Other drivers claim that they enter into their cars, and many of them become startled and crash when they look in their rearview mirror to see this bloody apparition. At a number 9 spot, we have the Fordham University Spirit Story. Before we begin, scenes from The Exorcist were shot here, so it was probably for good reason since they wanted to shoot a horror film at this university filled with the supernatural. In the summer of 2003, RAs in the place noticed that in one room the beds were propped up rather than lying on the floor. It wasn't until one day an RA awoke from knocking on his door. When he opened it, he saw a Jesuit priest who said he would take care of the mattresses. Except when the RA tried to figure out who the priest was, he discovered that the only Jesuit priest bearing that description had passed away 10 years ago. That's not all the ghosts within this university. It's said that the spirit of a little girl who has been seen in the bathrooms is said to lurk and peek behind the shower curtains. Many other students revealed that they had sleep paralysis when inside the dorms, even though they had no such thing prior. Lastly, other students report being woken up due to the feeling of someone grabbing their neck and tugging their legs as if someone wants to drag them. At a number 8 spot, we have Rochester's White Lady. There's a white lady scary urban legend in almost all cultures, so I had to mention one in New York as well. In Eastman Durham Park, visitors claim to see a crying woman asking where her daughter is. The story goes that in the early 1800s, a woman named Elisa lived in the area with her farmer husband. After a seemingly good start to their new home in Rochester, tragedy struck when Elisa's daughter suddenly disappeared. The story of her disappearance varies, but the most popular one is that the daughter asked Elisa if she can walk to the lake, but she never ended up returning. Regardless of what version you believe, the result is the same. People see the white lady roam the perimeters of the lake, constantly wailing and asking for the location of her daughter. People claim that she is more aggressive towards men, but appears as more heartfelt and sorrowful for women. This could be because women are more likely to assist her in finding her daughter, but much of it is unknown. At a number 7 spot, we have the White Horse Tavern. This tavern was established all the way back in 1673, making it America's oldest tavern, as you can see from the sign in the front of the building. During the 18th century, the owner of the bar was reported to be a pirate and rum smuggler, and when the British authorities were hunting for him, he hid out in this tavern during the Revolutionary War and brought in many other soldiers with him, where a lot of them would pass away in that tavern. The most activity in the tavern is said to be located on the 2nd floor in the master bedroom. Story goes that a young girl passed away from smallpox in that room, and many guests hear the little girl singing, and some workers claim claim they see a little girl running around with a lemon and lime knife looking to attack unsuspecting victims. And remember that pirate owner I mentioned? Yeah, he would end up murdering someone in that very room, but that's all up for speculation still. Regardless, the world's oldest tavern had to have a few of their own ghost stories. At our number 6 spot, we have the Rolling Hills Asylum. Located in East Bethany, New York, this asylum was originally named the Genesee County Poor Farm. A poorhouse is a place where orphan children, families, the elderly, and where physically and mentally handicapped people go. All the people who passed away at the asylum were buried on the property grounds, which led many people to believe to be haunted throughout the entire area. The favorite entity spotted there is called Roy Crouse. The owner had encounter with Roy the ghost. One day she went in and a rat went across the room. The rat startled her and then she went to scream and then left the asylum. The next day when she came back, she noticed a rat that startled her was found dead on the stairs with blood oozing out of it. Above that was a bloody handprint, presumably with the blood of the rat. She believes it was Roy helping her as the rat scared her pretty bad. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Curse of 1940. The Curse of 1940, or the Dutton's Curse, was a hex that was believed to cause NHL's New York Rangers not to win a Stanley Cup between 1941 all up until 1993. For all you non-hockey fans, the New York Rangers were very successful in their early years when they took 3 Stanley Cups, 1928, 1933, and 1940. After a 54-year wait, they won another Stanley Cup in 1994, but many fans believe the reason they haven't touched gold in so long is because of this curse. This was because in the 1939-40 season, the mortgage of the Madison Square Garden, which is the place where the Rangers played, was paid off, which led to management to burn the entire mortgage in the bowl of the cup. This led many to believe that the hockey gods put a curse on them. For example, in the 1950 Stanley Cup Finals, the Rangers had to play in the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto for their home ice, which could be related to the fact that the MSG burned their mortgage, forcing them to play in another city, hence why they didn't win that year. I know sports curses are not scary at all, but for New York Rangers fans, this is the most terrifying thing they heard all year. At our number 4 spot, we have Palmyra Historical Museum. As the name suggests, this museum is located in Palmyra, New York. This building is thought to be over 200 years old and once served as a tavern and a hotel. It is now open to the public as a museum, but there's a reason why this one is on the list. The story goes that 6 days before Christmas 1964, a fire raged a small home which had Ruth Anna Breeden, her husband Paul, and 6 children inside. It was a supposed flash fire which engulfed the entire house quickly. The husband managed to escape, but the mother and her 6 children were found burnt in the basement underneath a mattress. Although the fire didn't happen in the museum per se, it sits on the home's foundation, meaning the basement is the exact same. This is why many guests claim to catch the scent of ash in the basement, because this is where the woman and her children lost their life. In the museum, guests also report toys being flown off shelves and even feeling their hair and clothes being tugged on. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Vale Cemetery. After being opened in 1857, the historic Vale Cemetery became the largest cemetery in Schenectady, New York. After many years, guests will report some pretty eerie paranormal activity going on inside the cemetery. Many people had come forward, all reporting the same phenomenon, saying that the statues would bleed from their eyes. It's very important to note that all the people that came forward were not related in any sort of way, making all these accounts really genuine. Other people visiting the cemetery also claim that they've seen figures sitting in the trees above the tombstones and even full-blown apparitions of crying ghosts. The cemetery now has a total of 33,000 assigned plots, making it a spiritual hub. At our number 2 spot, we have the ghost ship of the Hudson River. Back when New York was just a small village, reports surfaced of a spooky ship floating on the river. Seen at dusk on foggy days, many say it was the spirit of the Henry Hudson's Half Moon ship. One of the reports came from an anonymous source of the weather dork that they referred to as Samuel. He was spending the day fishing on the shore of the Hudson, but then an odd ship caught his gaze. He claimed the ship was floating on air above the water, but as the ship got closer to him, he found that it had no crew on deck and had 3 empty masts. Regardless of the fact that it was floating, the ship could only be heard when it got closer, and the wood would be creaking as if it was on water when it wasn't. Eventually, a storm came and slowly brought the ship back into the river, slowly disappearing into the darkness and the rain. If you listen to this story and get some Flying Dutchman vibes, you're right. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have the Amityville Horror House. It all started with an invitation from a news anchorman in Long Island. All the Warrens knew that there was a tragedy inside of the home, and the owners left after only living at the home for little less than a month. After Ed Warren spoke to the owner of the home, George Lutz, he quickly agreed to have them investigate. George was so horrified by the house that he only left the keys to the house and completely left the area. When the Warrens were in the house, they described feeling a powerful negative energy, calling it, quote, diabolically infested. Ed then entered the basement and felt immediate pressure, which pinned him on the floor. He commanded to Jesus Christ to leave, and it lifted it off of him. This was no regular paranormal case. The Warrens Singaporeans were unaware that 6 people were murdered in that home 7 months ago, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family in that one night.
Starting off at number 10, the Voodoo Caves. Located in the Beaver Dam Mountains is a pipe known as the Voodoo Caves. According to local lore, practitioners of dark magic performed countless rituals inside the pipe, leaving behind an evil residual energy that curses or takes the lives of those who enter. It's believed if anyone within the cave insults Satan or makes any derogatory remarks about the entity that lurks there, they will find themselves trapped inside by rising water. The malevolent force got the blame for the passing of a worker who went inside the underground pipe to remove a clog when he got pinned down and drowned. Now at number 9, Bear Lake Monster. The urban legend of the Bear Lake Monster goes back to at least 1868, when desert news reporter Joseph C. Rich ran a series about the serpent-like creature. The series quoted many well-known citizens who all claimed they'd seen the monster. However, in 1888, Mr. Rich admitted that he'd made all the stories up. The legend continues, however. Every so often, someone does claim they have seen the Bear Lake creature, which coincidentally resembles the Loch Ness Monster legend in Scotland. Here at number 8, the legend of Lillian Gray. In the middle of Salt Lake City Cemetery sits a gravestone reading Lily E. Gray, June 6, 1881 to November 14, 1958. Accompanied by the very ominous phrase, "Victim of the Beast 666. Lillian remains a mystery, and her headstone forms the source of wild tales of her being a sacrifice to Satan, or that she herself was a Satanist. Some have speculated that she was another innocent woman accused of witchcraft. Another theory, because Utah is clearly full of ominous places, proposes she died on Highway 666, which is also one of the country's most infamously dangerous freeways. Coming in at number 7, Skinwalker Ranch. The Sherman Ranch in Ballard, Utah is better known to locals and paranormal investigators as the Skinwalker Ranch, or the UFO Ranch. The name comes from the alarming number of alleged skinwalker sightings and reports of paranormal and UFO-related phenomena. The 40-acre ranch borders the Indian reservation and has a history of mutilated cattle, spirit orbs, unidentified objects hovering in the sky, and what's been described as a large, red-eyed beast similar to the Native American depictions of skinwalkers, half-human, half-animal monstrosities. Now coming in at number 6, the ghost of Red Lopez. In early 1915, Bingham miners began hearing a voice, supposedly the ghost of Rafael Red Lopez. According to an article in the February 2nd, 1915 edition of the Ogden Daily Standard, Lopez was a miner who shot and took the life of another miner in November 1913. He also reportedly took the life of Bingham's police chief and 2 sheriff deputies in an ambush later that day. A week later, he then reportedly took the lives of 2 other deputies during a manhunt for him that lasted into 1914. But Lopez was never found or heard from again in Utah. It's still one of the state's largest crime mysteries that wasn't closed until 2003. Back in 1915, the report stated that the workers began to be terrorized during the past few days by the shoutings of a gloomy voice in an area of the mine where 2 of the deputies passed away. Halfway at number 5, teen in a tanning bed. The urban legend about the bride cooking herself in a tanning bed circulated all over the country, but it allegedly originated in Utah with a teenage girl. The story begins with a 17-year-old winning a trip to Hawaii, and naturally she wanted to get bronzed before her trip. Though limits exist for how long and how often you can sit in these tanning beds, the girl, however, supposedly found a way around this rule by hopping around town to town to different salons, 4 to be exact, in just one afternoon. She eventually ended up in Utah Valley Regional Medical Center because her internal organs were shutting down and she went blind from cooking herself all day. Now, a reminder, this one is just an urban legend. Now at number 4, the Lady in Purple. Over the years, many people have claimed to have seen a woman dressed in purple who appears angry or unhappy inside the Rio Grande Depot in Salt Lake City. In 2017, Rio Grande Cafe manager Colleen Murphy told KSL-TV she has seen lights come on at night in a locked room at the bottom of a stairwell with nobody seemingly there to turn them on. She also said that she had been locked out of the building on multiple occasions late at night, with no real explanation. Others have told her they've heard singing at night, coming from the woman's bathroom in the depot, even when the building is seemingly empty. As the legend goes, the woman tossed her engagement ring onto the tracks during an argument with her fiancé at the depot. Deciding she had made a mistake, she jumped down to retrieve the ring when she was struck and unfortunately passed away by an oncoming train. Now at number 3, the inmate. Salt Lake Herald-Republican on January 8, 1905 reported a frightening tale from the Salt Lake City jail. 2 women at the jail reported they had seen a ghost there, walking the halls at night. The ghost was a man who wore a slouch hat pulled over his eyes and would peer through the grating in the building. They told the newspaper that the ghost was that of a former inmate who had died there in a gruesome manner. On one particular night, one of the women said that she heard a ghost noise by a door, then walked up and asked if it was indeed the dead inmate. "Ain't you dead?" she asked. By way of reply, the ghost began to prance up and down the narrow hallway, swinging his arms and smiling, laughing, and shaking his head. While they never saw the man the day he died, they told the newspaper they were convinced it was him. Now at number 2, the Devil's Highway, kinda like what we mentioned before. The highway system, originally named Route 666 and nicknamed the Devil's Highway, crossed through an area of the United States known as the Four Corners, the meeting space of Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. All 4 states have reported paranormal experiences while on this stretch of highway. Tales range from hellhounds chasing alongside cars and slashing tires to skinwalkers shifting from animal to man before their very eyes, to an evil shaman who appears in the backseat to steal the driver's soul. Like many roads, Highway 666 also hosts a ghostly hitchhiker, a mysterious young woman in a nightgown walking the road alone. When someone tries to offer her a ride, she vanishes. A popular legend attached to the Devil's Highway is that of a mad trucker, a phantom semi-truck that terrorizes late-night drivers before disappearing. One witness reported her husband's experience. Allegedly, he was driving on Route 666 one night when a semi-truck began heading straight for him down the middle of the highway. He said the truck had to have been going around 130 miles per hour, with sparks and flames flying up from the wheels. He pulled off the road in time to miss what he thought would be a fiery collision, and the beast of a vehicle took off into the night. Now coming in at number 1, the haunted Old Main. Everyone who has passed through the Southern Utah University campus has heard the lore of Virginia Loomis and Old Main, a building on the university's campus. As the legend goes, Virginia Loomis's life was taken in the late 1800s. Her body was discovered on the boulder used to make many of the bricks to construct the Cedar City building in 1898. It's said some of the bricks even contain her blood. Later in life, a janitor was hired at the university. On his first day of work, he was allegedly lighting the old coal furnace in Old Main's basement when something caused the furnace door to slam shut on his arm. He was supposedly burned until he passed away, unable to get free, becoming the human torch that burned Old Main to the ground in 1948. It's said that the ghost of Virginia was seen laughing in the flames, and Virginia was written on the janitor's skull.
At our number 10 spot, we have the Candy Lady. In the early 1900s, children in the rural town of Terrell, Texas started to go missing. Some of the residents blamed it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's home windows just before bedtime. As the parents began to fall asleep, it'll encourage children to grab the candy, but as they try to grab it, the lady grabs them and feasts on their sugar-laden blood until there isn't any left. A farmer allegedly found rotten teeth on his farm and later found the body of a boy with his pockets stuffed with candy. Many people believe that Candy Lady is in fact real and went by the name of Clara Crane. Clara Crane was accused of poisoning her husband back in 1895 with poison-laced caramel candies. But that's not all. 5 years before the incident, Crane's 5-year-old daughter passed away from unknown causes, which many believe that she poisoned her daughter as well. At a number 9 spot, we have La Llorona. This legend originates from El Paso, Texas. Almost all Latin cultures know the story of La Llorona, and the people of El Paso are no exception to that. La Llorona directly translates to the weeping woman, which perfectly describes the behavior of this malevolent spirit. She is said to haunt the riverbanks of the Rio Grande, where she is searching for her 2 children whom she had already drowned in that very river. Now there are many iterations of the story, but I'll just mention the most popular one. The legend goes that a lady found her boyfriend with another woman. After a heated argument between the two, the woman was heartbroken and wanted to get revenge, so she took the children and proceeded to drown them in the Rio Grande River in Texas. It's also said that when she was done throwing her children into the river, she went back to her lover's home with a bloody wedding gown, showing her she would do whatever it took to be with him. It's said to be the reason why many children disappear in that very area, and she supposedly takes other children to fill the void she lost. So if you're in the area, beware of a woman weeping in a wedding gown who is sitting by the Rio Grande. At number 8 spot, El Cucuy. This creature is known as South Texas' official boogeyman. There are many versions of El Cucuy since it already originates in Mexico as well. It's said that this monster kidnaps children who misbehave and takes them back to the mountain where he lives to devour them. He appears appears as a hairless creature with an enormous head that dwarfs his spider-like body. He also has these large red glowing eyes, red ears to hear everything, and razor sharp fangs and claws to accompany that. The origin of El Cucuy goes that a man was suffering with tuberculosis. Desperate to cure himself, he fetched an African witch doctor. The doctor told him to drink a child's blood, but as he did, he started to turn into the monster described. Ever since, he has a never-ending thirst for children's blood. At our number 7, we have the Screaming Bridge. In North Arlington, Texas, 50 years ago, there was a group of teenage girls driving home from a football game. The bridge was designed to only fit one car at a time, and I know, what a dumb bridge, but this was in the past and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The girls weren't paying attention and went full speed over the bridge until a car with no headlights struck them head on, with all of the girls passing away. Some say when they go near the bridge, they can hear the distant screams sounding like the girls before they passed away. As well, if you go over the bridge and look down at the water below, you can see the tombstones of all the girls with their names and birthdays written on it. At number 6 spot, we have the Goatman's Bridge. Why are there so many haunted bridges? Like, I don't get it. But in Denton County, Texas, lies the Goatman's Bridge, which was built in 1884. This bridge is supposedly haunted by the ghost of the Goat Man. The story goes that a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn was renowned for quality meat, milk, and cheeses, and then he moved with his family just north of the bridge. Except when he arrived in this area, he was instantly the target of racial hate crime. The racist townfolk came together and burned down the farm with the family inside. They then threw Oscar's body over that very bridge. Now he appears as a half goat, half man humanoid that reeks of decaying flesh. If you knock on the bridge 3 times, it said that you can summon the Goat Man, but now others use this area for rituals and other supernatural activities. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Lady of White Rock Lake. The lake is located in Dallas, Texas, and many visitors claim that they spot a drenched young woman who appears crawling out of the water or asking to fetch a ride. When many people offer her this ride, she disappears out of thin air and leaves a bloody, wet seat mark and a terrified driver. Even though many of the drivers were scared to their core, some decide to go to the address given to them by the girl. When they arrive at the door, they're all met by the same man who tells them that his daughter had gone sailing and never came back. Many people believe the story is inspired by the 1953 book Neiman Marcus, Texas, the story of the Proud Dallas Store, and according to the book, Malloy and his wife are driving home late one night in East Dallas when a young, beautiful blonde girl ghost appears on the road. Her elegant dresses is naturally wet and she seems to be in trouble. She gives them an address on Gaston Avenue and asks them to be taken home, but as they drive, she disappears, leaving only a mark. At our number 4 spot, we have the Lake Worth Monster. You just learned about the Goatman, right? Well, this is basically the Goatman, but of the lake. This monster terrorized the people of the town for years, with many describing the creature as being 7 feet tall, around 300 pounds, long-necked, flop-eared, pot-bellied, covered in white scales and hair. I swear I just described Shaquille O'Neal. The monster was supposedly captured on camera, but you guys be the judge of that one. It looks like a 2-year-old drew on a camera lens on a potato with a crayon and then took this photo. But who knows, it might be real. This beast was inspired by Sally Ann Clark's book, The Lake Worth Monster of Greer Lake, Fort Worth, Texas. In the book, the monster jumped on the hood of someone's car and shook up the car so badly that they got caught in a bad accident. The people described it being a 7 feet tall being covered in scales and fur and resembled a half goat and half man. Pretty scary if you ask me. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have the Donkey Lady. The Donkey Lady of San Antonio, Texas dates all the way back in the late 1800s. The Donkey Lady was once a beautiful woman with children and a husband, but one day in a rage, the husband burned down the house with the children and wife still inside. The children passed away, but however, the wife managed to survive, but suffered greatly from this. Her toes and fingers would be fused together in a hoove-like way, and her face was melted and sagging, inspiring the Donkey Lady name. There's a bridge in South San Antonio named the Old Applewhite Bridge, or the Donkey Lady Bridge. This is the bridge she went to crown after this horrible tragedy. Now it's said if you go to the bridge after midnight and call out the Donkey Lady, she will appear just before you. Some have claimed she had run at people who call out her name, or sometimes just stalks in the forest line waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. At number 2 spot, we have the girl who danced with the devil. The story takes place in the 1970s in San Antonio, Texas, with a young Mexican girl named Rosa. One day the girl wanted to attend a dance at a nearby nightclub named the El Cabrancito. However, the parents were very strict and didn't want her anywhere near the nightclub. Despite their orders, she snuck out of her house and traveled all the way to the nightclub where she could finally have her dance. At the club, Rosa was approached by this very tall, charming, and well-dressed man who asked her permission to dance. When they began dancing, Rosa was terrified when she discovered he had goat hooves instead of feet. When she screamed in terror, people in the club started to chase him out, but as he got close, he vanished out of thin air, leaving a trail of smoke and the smell of sulfur. Double activity if that wasn't enough. It's said that the area surrounding the nightclub still smells of sulfur to this day. At a number 1 spot with El Muerto. El Muerto, otherwise known as the Headless Horseman of Texas, is a Texas legend that dates all the way back in the mid-1800s. The story goes that 2 rangers, Creed Taylor and William Bigfoot Wallace, were hunting a criminal known as Vidal along the Mexican border. Vidal had been wreaking havoc all across the state of Texas, so when the ranger caught them, they wanted to set an example. So they did just that and cut his head clean off. They then tied his head to the saddle and sent his horse with the headless body running off into the night. Now the horse continued to explore the region with its headless rider. The tale of El Muerto began to grow after it was reported that both had been seen numerous times and that gunshots had no impact on either of them. Spotting El Muerto was thought to foreshadow bad luck because everyone who claimed to have seen him was struck with a series of bad luck and poor health following it.
Starting off this countdown at number 10, La Plaza Mansion. La Plaza Mansion has made an appearance on many TV shows about ghosts and is known to be one of the most haunted places in the United States. The previous owner started freaking out when bad things started happening in the house. He tried to confront the evil spirit, but it was rumored that he was choked until he almost passed away. He was fortunate to have escaped, and the house currently remains vacant with no one inside. Well, no one living there, I guess. It's believed the mob in Las Vegas owned this house. Upon investigation, they discovered a room covered with dry blood. It's speculated that the mob used this room to perform executions. While no one has dared to live in the house after that one man, no one has also ever dared to tear it down out of fear. Now at number 9, the Sphinx. A geographic phenomenon serves as the source for an urban legend that continues to intrigue and mystify people to this day. If you traveled through Nevada, you've probably noticed how Nevada's rivers empty into small lakes that don't have any visible outlets. These lakes are called sinks, referring to the way that the water simply sinks away. An urban legend says that the sinking water is to God, who, after creating the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, decided to make a third river in Nevada that was bigger than the others. God spent time creating 8 smaller rivers that would forge together to make one big river, but he ran out of time and decided to finish the work later. God tucked in the ends of the rivers overnight to keep them safe, but when the next day came, he forgot about them, and the 8 rivers were left alone, leading nowhere and eventually emptying into the sinks. Now coming in at number 8, bodies in the Hoover Dam. Sometimes urban legends become so popular that people start believing it's a fact, and here's just one example. The Hoover Dam was built in the 1930s. During its construction, 96 workers unfortunately lost their lives, but popular belief says the number could be much higher. More disturbing than that is that it's said that 7 bodies were allegedly never removed from the dam because they fell through gaps and were buried in the concrete. Coming in at number 7, corpse under the bed. I'm sure you guys have all heard about this one before, but let's talk about it again. This urban legend is one that has done the rounds across the United States. The general story is that guests will stay at a cheap hotel for the night. They will enjoy a great night's sleep before waking up in the morning to smell something very pungent and gross. Upon investigating the foul smell, the guests will discover the decomposing corpse of a victim rotting right under where they laid their head that previous night. It's alleged that this myth started in Las Vegas after gangsters would leave their murder victims under the bed in hotels. Coming in at number 6, Del H. Robinson Middle School. Kids can have a wild imagination when it comes to urban legends and myths. However, this one seems to have many witnesses to be dismissed without a thought. The students at Del H. Robinson Middle School have reported seeing a janitor walking the halls with bloody hands. Some new arrivals to the school have also claimed to see a man in their dreams after enrolling in the school. Some say that he followed them home and then disappeared. The strange twist to this Las Vegas urban legend is that all witnesses said their sightings ended when they started going to church. Halfway at number 5, the Megabucks curse. In March 2000, Cynthia J. Brennan won the life-changing Megabucks jackpot at the Desert Inn. It was a total of $34.9 million. However, tragically, Cynthia was then involved in a horrific car accident just days after the winning. The accident left her quadriplegic and ignited rumors that the Megabucks prize was cursed. The flames of this legend were fanned even more in 2003, when it claimed that an anonymous winner of the $39.7 million Megabucks jackpot at the Excalibur Hotel unfortunately passed away after a drug overdose. Even though no official confirmation has come from winners losing their lives after winning the Megabucks jackpot, many still believe in the Megabucks curse. Previous winners have allegedly passed away in plane crashes, passed in Los Angeles gang fights, and suffered heart attacks. Now at number 4, ghost at Goldfield Hotel. There are several urban legends associated with Goldfield Hotel. The most famous urban legend is the story of Elizabeth. As legend has it, Elizabeth, who was an intimate street worker, and George Wingfield, who was a past owner, had gotten her pregnant. Because George was afraid of the publicity destroying his reputation, he chained Elizabeth to the radiator in room number 109. Supposedly, after Elizabeth gave birth, Wingfield threw the baby down an abandoned mine shaft in the basement of the hotel, and either allowed Elizabeth to pass away on her own or had someone take her life. Now at number 3, Black Market. This classic urban legend ticks all the boxes on the list for horrifying. This urban legend goes like this. One night out, some tourists met some locals in a bar and eventually have their drinks spiked, and they then wake up in a nightmare situation. If you've watched Hostel, then you'll have a rough idea of how this one goes. In 1991, one specific rumor started doing the rounds that an individual was spiking the drinks of unsuspecting drinkers on nights out in Las Vegas and stealing their kidneys to sell them for money. Victims would be sharing drinks with a charismatic stranger one minute, and the next minute they would be waking up in a hotel bathtub covered with ice and stitches on their lower back. The predator would leave a simple note stating call 911 or you'll die. Now coming in at number 2, the ghosts of the MGM Grand Fire. On the 21st of November 1980, the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino was the scene for one of the most devastating tragedies in the history of the city. A blazing fire ripped through the resort, claiming the lives of 85 people. At the time of the fire, hotels in Las Vegas were not required to have sprinkler systems installed, so this hotel didn't have one. It was said that faulty wiring is what caused the fire, and it could not be stopped in time to save the lives of those that were eventually lost. Bally's Las Vegas now stands on the site of the old hotel, and it is rumored that the ghosts of those that passed on that fateful night roam the halls of the new hotel, haunting people because no one was able to save them.
Officials later estimated the fire traveled across the casino, the length of a football field, in less than 20 seconds. Had it been later in the day, the area likely would have been jammed with gamblers. At this point, smoke rising from the MGM could be seen for miles around, and firefighters were rushing toward the MGM from all over the Las Vegas area.
Now coming in at number 1, Area 51. When you hear about urban legends associated with Las Vegas, Area 51 is usually at the top of the list. Officially called the Nevada Test and Training Range, this high-security open training range for the US Air Force in the Nevada desert has been the subject of controversy and conversation over the years. One widely held conspiracy involves Area 51 and UFOs. Some stories connected with the site suggest that the remains from a flying saucer that supposedly crashed near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 was then transported to Area 51 for further examination. Granted, the Air Force began to investigate claims of UFO sightings in 1952, an effort that later became known as Project Blue Book. When Project Blue Book ended in 1996, the Air Force had investigated more than 12,000 UFO claims. Dr. Jeffrey T. Richardson, a former senior fellow at the George Washington University National Security Archive, did a lot of research into Area 51 during his lifetime. He reported that the CIA's Lockheed U-2 plane reconnaissance program, spy planes used to gather intelligence, was connected with Area 51. Jeffrey filed a Freedom of Information Act in 2005 to seek information about this program. In 2013, Richardson told the New York Times that after examining declassified CIA documents about activity in Area 51, quote, the only overlap is the discussion of the U-2 flights and UFO sightings. The fact that you had these high-flying aircrafts in the air being the cause of some of the sightings. So what do you think really goes on at Area 51?
At number 10 spot, we have the walking statue of Augusta Bittner. In the northeastern part of Lancaster lies the Lancaster Cemetery. While the cemetery is massive and has hundreds of tombstones, one particular memorial sticks out to all guests who visit, and this is the tombstone of Augusta Bittner. The statue itself is gorgeous in an artistic standpoint, but I can definitely see why people fear the statue at night. And many visitors to the cemetery claim to see the statue walking across the grounds. The apparition is said to have flaming green eyes swollen with tears that seem to be trapped in a state of death, searching relentlessly for answers. Story goes that Augusta Bittner married a man named Stanley Tevis on May 3rd, 1905. They would eventually move to Philadelphia, where Augusta gave birth to their first daughter, Sylvia. Everything seemed to be going well until their first anniversary. Augusta fell ill to typhoid and passed a horrible death. So basically within 13 months, Augusta married, had a baby, and passed away. Her parents then spent a fortune on her tombstone, and over 100 years later, it's still standing strong and beautiful. Except for the fact that it walks around crying. Yeah, no thanks. At a number 9 spot, we have the Clifton 5 Theater. This place was built in the mid 1850s and is still running to this day. The Clifton 5 Theater, formerly known as a Hunting Dawn Opera House, was so large that the street level had to be raised a total of 4 feet to accommodate it. And it was also a place where Freemasons would have meetings in secret. It wasn't until 1901 where the largest fire in Huntington's history burned down the theater. This fire saw the end of at least one person. Then in 1921, a man named Andy Gamble purchased the theater only to be met with yet another fire. Eventually, a man named Blackford bought the business and named it Clifton, which is named after his son who passed away in the military. And ever since, people have claimed to witness all sorts of creepy things. Visitors cite the lady in red ghost, who is believed to be a person who is well off, wearing a scarlet dress, walking up and down the stairways. When people get too close to her, they claim to hear her whisper, Lolita. Perhaps a daughter? No one really knows. At number 8 spot, we have the house on Ridge Avenue. In the north side of Pittsburgh lies in what is known as the house the devil built. The house is actually 1129 Ridge Avenue and known as the Conglier House. It was built in the 1860s by Charles Conglier, who lived in the house with his wife Lida and their maid Essie. The maid and Charles would be having a secret affair, and soon after, the wife overheard what was happening, so she collected a knife and proceeded to murder the two. She would be found later humming lullabies as she rocked on her chair. Then in 1900, Dr. Adolph purchased the home. One day the neighbors heard a woman screaming in the house and called the police. Once the cops arrived, the doctor was nowhere to be found, but instead there was only a body of a woman with no head. Then a single mother and her 5 children lived there in the 1920s, until a nearby natural gas tank exploded and killed the mother, causing the 5 children to be left abandoned. Although the tale is said to be fabricated, many of these stories are actually true. At number 7, we have the Squonk. When I saw this guy, I couldn't help but laugh. And the only reason I added him on this list was because he was a mythical creature, and come on, he's terrifyingly cute and ugly at the same time. The Squonk is a pig hybrid that almost has decaying skin that is covered in warts. Its tusks are yellow and crooked with cauliflower ears, looking like any MMA fighter. It appears to be crying because it just thinks it's ugly, which is just so freaking sad. I kinda wanna just give it a hug. Except if you try, hunters claim that the creature turns into a puddle of tears. A man named JP Wentling was said to have captured the Squonk in a bag, but once he went to go show everyone, the thing that remained was only the liquid of the creature. Some believe the Squonks can predict the future and will accept something in exchange for this. However, since they are pessimistic creatures, only the bad parts of your future will be mentioned. So this is basically like having a fortune teller who just hates their life. At number 6 spot with Albawitch. In the forest of Columbia, Pennsylvania is a 4-foot tall hairy creature known as the Albawitch. Their name is just short for apple snitch, since they are known to be snatching apples left and right like they're trying to miss a day at the doctor's. People who walk along the Susquehanna River claim to have these small creatures violently throw apples at them to push them away from their homes. Their homes are said to be on top of the treetops where they would only come down to gather apples. These hairy humanoids are often mistaken as Bigfoot, since they're also reported around the area. What if these guys are just Bigfoot children? This would explain their small stature at least. Despite the fact that these creatures are not likely to cause death, getting apples thrown at you aggressively doesn't sound too appealing either. In the hump of our list, we have the Appalachian Trail. From Maine all the way to Georgia, the Appalachian Trail is a 2,200 mile stretch that is also the longest hiking only trail in the world. This place is known for its beauty. Every mile is filled with fresh sights and breathtaking views. But when you have this much of inhabited land, some things are bound to happen to those visiting the area. Many hikers who have trekked this path have shared their haunting stories online for those to see, and it's crazy the amount of stories I read. So many it almost seems like it isn't a coincidence. Some have mentioned encountering the mountain people while on their hike, saying that they protect their camps with extreme violence and they have a tent-like city within these trails. Apart from the mountain men, the trail has had over 10 homicides. The first one happened in 1974 in Georgia and 3 in Pennsylvania. Then in 1990, a double murder took place at the top of Cove Mountain located within Pennsylvania. A young 25 and 26-year-old couple was shot and stabbed to death by a wanted criminal. The details of this crime are horrific, so I probably won't mention the specifics here. At a number 4 spot, we have No Face Charlie. If you grew up in the 1950s and 60s in western Pennsylvania, chances are you heard the legend of the Green Man or No Face Charlie. The legend says that No Face Charlie would stalk the remote streets at night and sometimes chase others away from him. No disrespect, but if I saw him at night, I would definitely be running the other way. No Face Charlie was actually based on a real man named Raymond Robinson. His story is pretty tragic. In 1919, Robinson was only 8 years old when he was reaching for a bird's nest at the top of an electrical pole when he was suddenly shocked with 11,000 volts of electricity. He was severely injured. His nose, lips, and ears, and also eyes were all gone or misshapen. And on top of that, one of his hands were completely blown off. This is what gave him this image that appears haunting for others. Raymond was in fact a really kind and friendly individual, but others feared him and will give him this negative stigma regardless of how he really was on the inside. He has now since passed, and I hope he's finally accepted for who he is. At number 3 spot, we have Blue Mist Road. Blue Mist Road is actually named Irwin Road, and locals claim that you can see a blue mist covering the entire road at night. Back in the 1800s, it was a dirt road, and even to this day, it still remains unpaved. The road has way too many tragic stories to tell you in one single point, but let me tell you a few of these. This place has a very dark history to it. Legends claim that a witch lived on this road who used to practice black magic, including rituals and human sacrifice. A family lived here, and one day the husband came home in a trance-like state and murdered his entire family. At number 2 spot, we have Anna Baker's dress. This dress belonged to Anna Baker, who was a part of a wealthy family located in Altoona, Pennsylvania. They would reside in what is known now as the Baker Mansion in 1849. The same year, Anna fell in love with a man and planned to get married, but her father Elias was like, no, that's not happening. It's believed he said no because he was part of a different social class. He didn't want this marriage to happen so bad he even got the man banished from the town. Anna was heartbroken and begged her dad, but her dad kept saying no. She then went out on her way to buy her own dress, the one in the photo, and showed her father, and he was still very adamant on the decision to say no. So in spite of her father, she was never married even after his death. Fast forward to 1922, all the members of the Baker family passed away, and the mansion had been bought up by the Blair County Historical Society and turned into a museum. In the museum, guests report seeing the glass of the dress being shaken violently. Others report seeing a woman apparition in a black dress staring into this display. Perhaps it's Anna from the grave, but we'll never know. At number 1 spot, we have the Devil's Road. Yup, nothing good about this one. Night Shyamalan filmed his 2004 horror film The Village in a nearby field because this creepy area just north of the Delaware border is so infused with ghostly tales. Rumor has it that a white house hidden in the wood on Devil's Road, officially named Cosart Road, was home to the family of the DuPonts, a wealthy family who resorted to inbreeding to keep their fortune within the family. The cult house, as it was known, was used to perform incestuous marriages and to conceal deformed offspring. The trees in the area have a dramatic bend away from the house, as if they're attempting to flee away from it. With the number 10 spot, we're the Goldfield Hotel. With a population of less than 300 people, this ghost town is bound to have something haunted within it. And guess what? It does. So this town got its name because it was discovered in 1902 because of a gold rush. As with many gold rush towns, when the gold went away, so did the people. Then in 1923, a fire engulfed the entire town, leaving the hotel standing alone. This hotel is now a symbol of what used to be, and many visitors claim that it's haunted by the former townsfolk. One of the most notorious spirits found in the hallways of the hotel is a woman named Elizabeth. Legend has it Elizabeth became pregnant with George Wingfield, which was one of the hotel's first owners' child. When he found out, he chained Elizabeth to a radiator in room 109 of the hotel. He supplied her with food and water until she gave birth. Some say Elizabeth passed away shortly after giving birth, and ever since you can hear a baby and her woman crying from room 109. At number 9 spot, with the Clown Motel. If you have a fear for clowns, this motel is probably the last place you want to sleep at. This hotel has an obvious theme for clowns, and this was because the father of the owner was a clown collector and ended up being buried at the cemetery, which is located right beside this motel. Motel and cemetery, probably not the most appealing combination. Not only does each and every single room have all types of different clown decorations, but past owners and workers have claimed that it was haunted since the time it was built. They would recall hearing footsteps and voices coming from unoccupied rooms. Even on their website, they have different rooms and the spiritual encounters in each and every single one of them. Because of this, they have a disclaimer which reads, quote, "By visiting the Clown Motel, you acknowledge that you may encounter interaction with spiritual and or unexplained phenomena and or other unexplainable, unusual, or paranormal activity or interactions, which may include risk which may or may not be foreseeable. The Clown Motel will not be held liable for any bodily damage, injury, or personal property, emotional distress, death, or other harm caused by aforementioned." Many others have visited this hotel, and many other YouTubers have documented their trip, but you must be a clown to step into this one. Haha, no, anyone? no? Okay. At number 8 spot, we have the Lovelock Cave. Located in the middle of Churchill County, the Lovelock Cave is one of those discoveries that makes you question our history a little bit. In 1911, 2 miners were sent to this cave to search for bat guano, which is just bat poop for those who don't know. They would collect loads of this stuff, but eventually as they got deeper into the cave, they began to discover things like baskets, shoes, and even skeletons of humans. The craziest part about this is that it claimed that the skeletons of the humans were giants. I don't mean like 7 feet beings like Shaq, I mean like 10 to 15 tall beings. Local legend claimed that the local Paiute tribe was once at war with cannibalistic giants. The tribe was able to fight them back and trap the giants in this cave. They then filled the cave with deadly smoke to suffocate the rest of the giants in there. Even though bones have not been formally documented, it could be hidden from the public. Who knows? At number 7 spot, we have Tahoe Tessie. On the border of California and Nevada lies the beautiful Lake Tahoe. Legends from the Paiute tribe talk about a serpentine beast who lives in an underwater tunnel beneath that very caves. Then in 1959, a police officer named Mickey Daniels reported that something large rocked his boat while he was fishing with a friend at Lake Tahoe. And it was a cause of concern because his boat was 43 feet long. So something huge must have shaken it up. Except there's no sort of whales in Tahoe, so many claimed it was actually the beast Tessie. They believe Tessie to be around 80 feet long and to be as thick as a telephone pole. Many claim it has relations to the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland, and if you see these two side by side, they honestly look like brothers. Regardless, just be wary of what lies underneath the depths next time you swim at Lake Tahoe. Sometimes the beauty in the area may be deceiving. At number 6 spot, we have Virginia City. So this whole city inside Nevada is considered to be haunted. Yup, a whole city. This place started off as a mining town and was one of Nevada's fastest growing cities, but in 1875 a fire engulfed everything within 9 hours, leaving more than 2,000 structures destroyed, hundreds homeless, and over 300 passed away. Now it's said that the spirits roam the entire town, haunting every single building within it. For example, the old Gold Hill Hotel is said to have the ghosts of children running the halls and scents of rose when spirits are nearby. The Silver Queen Hotel is allegedly haunted by one of the former workers. It's said that her spirit grabs people's hair and attempts to trip them down the stairs. Then in the St. Mary Arts Center, which was built in 1875, the same year of the fire, it's said that they offer paranormal investigations, including seances inside of the building. Right in the hump of our list, we have Bally's Casino and the MGM fire. Let's take a gamble and talk about the infamous fire that claimed the lives of many in the Las Vegas Strip. On November 21, 1980, in the world-renowned MGM Grand, a devastating fire engulfed the place, with it being the second largest loss of life hotel fire in the history of the US, with over 87 people passing away and 700 injured. During the fire, no alarms rang, and to make matters worse, sprinklers weren't even installed in all parts of the building. 8 months after, and the MGM Grand Hotel was rebuilt and reopened to the public. But ever since, visitors claim all sorts of paranormal activity. This includes ghostly apparitions on the same casino floor as the site of the fire, with some reporting that the ghosts are actually still gambling to this day, which is attributed to their last mortal moments before their passing. At number 4 spot, we have Area 51. Couldn't mention Nevada without Area 51. If you haven't been living under a rock, then you must know that this place is a potential alien hotspot. Many people believe this is a place where the government does secret tests with alien technology, and some claim that they keep aliens captive here. The most popular case was from Bob Lazar, who have claimed to work in Area 51 and said that he saw a UFO firsthand, describing it in very specific details. This led many to believe in his theory, and for probably forever, Area 51 will always be associated with alien activity until the US government tells me otherwise. At number 3 spot, we have the Flamingo Hotel. Until this violent murder 6 months after its opening in 1947, the Flamingo Hotel was the pride and joy of notorious mobster Bugsy Siegel. Siegel took over the final phases of construction and convinced more of his underworld associates, such as Meyer Lansky, to invest in the project. Siegel reportedly lost patience with the project's rising costs, and he once mentioned to the builder Del Webb that he personally killed 16 men on the job. However, some claim that he decided to stay indefinitely. Bugsy has allegedly been seen at the Garden Memorial, inside the wedding chapel, and roaming around the presidential suite, which still has the gold bathroom fixtures from his original room. Guests in his suite have reported hearing whispering and seeing dark shadows looming at the foot of their beds. At number 2 spot, with the Mob Museum. At a time, Las Vegas was controlled by the mob, and some believe they still do. So it's no surprise a museum of mob activity was built to recognize some of the horrific acts they committed. All of their exploits are documented at this mob museum, renovated from the same downtown courthouse where many of these characters were prosecuted. As you can imagine, they weren't too happy about their jail sentences, and some say their spirits still roam the halls after hours. The supernatural energy is especially strong near an exhibit dedicated to the St. Valentine 1959 Day Massacre, featuring a brick wall from a parking garage where 7 Chicago gangsters were shot dead in 1929. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have La Plaza Mansion. Although this property is pretty well put together, once you know about its past, you'll definitely look at it differently. It got such a bad rep, it eventually was considered to be Satan's mansion. Built in 1959, this now abandoned building was home to a threatening gangster. Here in this house, he would organize many of his hits. He would also execute others in that home, and he kept many people captive inside of the basement and the attic. So as the years went by, the house claimed more and more lives, eventually to a point when it reeked of the paranormal. Everyone who moved into the La Plaza Mansion reports a presence of negative energy that hangs over everything. And that's just where the haunting begins. If you visit, be prepared to hear whispers saying get out of here or kill her. And sometimes you might have some piece of furniture or decoration thrown at you aggressively.
Starting off at number 10, Gitche Manitou Murders. The Gitche Manitou is a nature preserve just southeast of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in the northeastern corner of Iowa that many believe is haunted. It has ancient Native American burial grounds, has witnessed the execution of 4 teens, and has been the site of an assault of a young child. In November of 1973, 5 teens from Sioux Falls went out camping in the area. The unsuspecting group was sitting by a fire with some green leafy substances when suddenly a shotgun went off. Roger SM, who was 17, instantly passed away by brothers Alan, David, and James Fryer, who descended on the group pretending to be cops. They separated the remaining 3 boys from the only girl, 13-year-old Sandra Chesky, and placed the girl in the back of their truck. Then the Fryer brothers lined up Stuart Bade, 15, with his little brother Dana Bade, 14, and friend Michael Hardoth, who was 15, and executed them. The little girl was kept alive and taken advantage of by James Fryer. She later identified the attackers and testified against them. They were sentenced to life in prison, but locals on both sides, Iowa and South Dakota, believe their horrible crimes still haunt the area. Number 9, Spook Road. Known to locals as Spook Road, this eerie stretch just outside of Brandon, South Dakota has quite the collection of creepy occurrences. Winding through tunnels, running over bridges, and lined in trees, locals claim this road is especially unnerving in the fall of winter months. There are many theories about the road, including one claim if you drive away from the town and count the number of turns, and then drive back and count them, you will end up with different numbers. Like driving in one direction will take you over 5 bridges, but on the way back you'll only cross 4. As if this wasn't weird enough, many cars have also wrecked on this road, which often leaves drivers with an unsettled feeling. While some people believe Spook Road is mere folklore, others will defend it to the end, with some die-hard believers even creating a Facebook group about Spook Road. Allegedly, people who also take their own lives here can still be seen hanging from both bridges and the trees, their bulging eyes watching you as you cross in horror. Number 8, Orpheum Theater. In Sioux Falls, South Dakota sits the historic Orpheum Theater with its very own ghost. The spirit, fondly referred to as Larry, may or may not be the ghost of an actor who disappeared during a dress rehearsal many years ago. Allegedly, the sound of a gunshot rang out from the light booth. When his fellow actors ran up to investigate, all that remained was a pool of blood and no body was ever found. The theater first opened in 1913 but changed hands in 1954. The new owners allegedly found a casket in the boiler room, but when they came back later to clean things out, the casket was gone. Reports of strange noises and sightings of a shadow figure became common in the old theater, and one of the more intriguing reports happened in 1959. Actor Ray Loftusness became one of the many to see this shadow man on the balcony. On that particular night, he said Larry was illuminated by the green and blue lights that was pointing directly at him. He claimed that he was hit by an icy blast of air. Then twice that night, he was assaulted by falling sandbags and was even knocked unconscious. Number 7, Sika Hollow. The Dakota Sioux Native Americans were said to have once hunted in the forest ravines known as Sika Hollow. That is, until they realized it was haunted and put a warning on its name. Sika means evil, and there are several legends that have come out of the state park. It's believed evil is steeped into every nook and cranny of this area, which is why water runs red in the Sika Hollow Springs. Never mind the mineral content, it's pure evil. The path referred to as the Trial of Spirits has bubbling red bogs and was believed by the Sioux to be the flesh and blood of their ancestors. Between all the red water, swamp gas, and tree stumps glowing in the dark, it's no wonder they thought this place was evil. Perhaps they were right. There was a rash of mysterious disappearances in the 1970s. Paired with sightings of a half-man, half-beast similar to Bigfoot in these woods. Even today, visitors have claimed to see spirits of Indians in addition to hearing voices, war cries, and chanting. This one certainly seems terrifying for sure, and definitely not a place I would want to visit. Number 6, 1880 Train Haunting. The 1880 train that runs through Hill City is rumored to be another one of the most haunted places in South Dakota. While some of the train cars are used at the current tourist attraction, many remain abandoned. Some employees have specifically mentioned seeing a man standing in the back of the eating car, only to disappear seconds later. It said that the man was crossing the tracks and accidentally got stuck and unfortunately passed away while trying to break free, and his soul now haunts the train that took his life. Trains didn't really freak me out before, but now hearing this story, I'm pretty freaked out. Halfway at number 5, Walking Sam. The Pine Ridge Indian Reservation has had an alarmingly high rate of people taking their own lives amongst their youth, and it's believed an urban legend is responsible for this. The land is being stalked by an ancient entity that takes the form of Walking Sam, like the Tall Man, Slender Man, and the long-feared Stickman. This creature feeds on the living, infecting their minds and altering their thoughts. In the case of Walking Sam, his evil bidding is collecting the souls of people who take their own lives so he doesn't have to wander the earth alone. He stands around 7 feet tall, has no mouth, and has gangly limbs. When his arms are outstretched, you can see the bodies of Lakota men and women hanging from them. Since December of 2014, Pine Ridge has had 103 attempts of people trying to take their own life, with 9 people unfortunately succeeding. The youngest was only 12 and the oldest was just 24. Thankfully, church leader Pastor John Tubles discovered and prevented one of these plans from being carried out. He and a few other adults found a group of teenagers with rope already hanging from the trees. Another group of teens, all female, tried to carry out a similar plan but were stopped in time. But no one has been able to answer the biggest question: why? Tribe leaders, local mental health professionals, and law enforcement are scratching their heads on what is causing this. Number 4, Little Devils. The Spirit Mound near Vermilion has been long feared by Native Americans. They wouldn't dare go near it because of the legend of the Little Devils, who guard the mounds, attacking anyone who tries to climb them with magic arrows. The legend was first documented in 1804 and tells of the massacre that makes the mounds taboo today. However, people say it seems to have existed since long before then. Somewhere around the mid-18th century, hundreds of Indian warriors allegedly attempted to rid the world of evil little creatures, but it was they who ended up slaughtered instead. So now they stay away and leave the mounds to Little Devils. Number 3, Hookie Jack. A famous ghost in Rapid City, South Dakota is Hookie Jack. In life, his name was John Leary, but after a mining explosion in the 1800s, he lost both of his arms and one eye. His arms were replaced with hooks, hence the name Hookie Jack. He became a Rapid City police officer, but tragically passed away after being struck by a car in 1926. Now his spirit is said to haunt his former residence, which has since been converted into a tavern. According to legend, Hookie Jack lived on the 3rd floor and can still be heard roaming up there today. Employees don't even want to venture to that floor unless they absolutely must. Many employees have even refused to work the closing shift alone. Voices, rattling, and eerie sounds can all be heard upstairs at night. Strange flashing lights and spirit orbs have been caught on security footage. Multiple witnesses have seen chairs, tables, and the billiard balls moving around the table on their own. A few bartenders even claim to have seen a figure sit at the end of the bar out of the corner of their eye, only to look up and realize no one's there. Number 2, Devil's Gulch. One of the most famous urban legends in South Dakota happened in the town of Garriston. According to the local lore, infamous outlaw Jesse James successfully evaded capture in 1876 by leaping over the Devil's Gulch on horseback. Keep in mind that the Devil's Gulch is a ravine that runs 60 feet deep and is 20 feet wide. Jumping over something that massive without spooking a horse is highly improbable, and most historians would say it's impossible, but that doesn't stop locals from swearing it happened. Number 1, Hotel Alex Johnson. A hotel so surely haunted they actually advertise it right on their website. Come take a tour or stay at this haunted mansion. One of the main ghosts claimed to be seen here is the hotel's namesake, Alex Johnson himself. It is said that he comes around to make sure the hotel is still running well, but does he have any malicious intent? Why don't you book a stay and test the theory yourself? If you dare, that is.
At number 10 spot, we have the grave with stairs. Just from the photo alone, this is one of the scariest graves I've ever seen. Easy access to the dead, right? Well, this eerie grave belonged to a girl named Florence Irene Ford. Then in 1871, shortly after her 10th birthday, she passed away from yellow fever. So the reason for the stairs, when the daughter was alive, she was always terrified of storms. So you would get the classic mom taking care of her own daughter. But since she has now passed, the mother decided to build stairs down to her casket in order to comfort her daughter when it got stormy. I mean, it's a really sweet idea until you realize it's also really scary. She would go down these stairs, close the trapdoor above her, sit in complete darkness while singing hymns and songs to her daughter. I could only imagine what the people around must have thought when they heard this type of stuff. At number 9 spot, we have the Devil Worshipper Road. Located in Waynesboro, this road's real name is Waynesboro Shibuda Road, or by its more popular name, the Devil Worshipper Road. I know, I read that name and already knew this story was going to be all types of creepy. Story goes that a local farmer was struggling financially, so in hopes to provide for himself, him and his family decided it was best to sell his soul to the devil. He documented the creature that approached him as being 7 feet tall, red glowing eyes, and holding a pitchfork. for. Many people say that when they drive on this road at night, their car shuts down, leaving them stranded. And imagine just being in the middle of this rural highway in the middle of the night with nothing but trees and trees all around you. For some people, the spirits try to taunt them by shaking up their car until they either crash or have to stop driving completely. Then when your car is shut off, some claim that a half goat, half man will stand on top of your vehicle. This is basically the plot of any horror movie ever. But who knows if it's real, because why would anyone want to go to a road named Devil Worshippers Road in the first place? At our 8th spot, we have the Weeping Woman of Callaway Hall. During the Civil War in Columbus, Mississippi, there were stories of a nurse who started to fall in love with a wounded soldier. After months in her care, the two would share stories and life experiences, but as the soldier started to heal back up, he quickly returned back into battle. He left, and after many years, he never ended up returning back to the woman. The nurse, who was named Mary, was so heartbroken that she ultimately made the decision to take her own life. She did this by jumping off the clock tower in the middle of the night. Now locals claim that her distraught spirit remains by the Callaway Hall tower to this day. The security guards report that their faucets would turn on and off, and these are the faucets with the handles you need to physically turn, not no hand sensor one. And she got her name because she tends to wake up students in the middle of the night by crying at the end of their beds, so just imagine what that would look like. At our number 7 spot, we have McCredit's disease. If you look up McCredit's online, you won't find much about it. However, if you're from Mississippi, you've probably heard older relatives mention it. Men back in the day and sometimes until now would ingest large amounts of lead, which would make them secrete a chemical and would make the women around them descend into a homicidal rage. For example, women who were the friendliest and happiest would turn into irrational and erratic people. The story started in Europe when a man had an angry mob of women running after him after he ingested a good amount of lead. Finding he couldn't do anything about it, he jumped into the well below freezing river, and with no hesitation, all the girls jumped in and ended up drowning. Then it hit Mississippi when a large group of women became hostile and tried to kill every man in town. I don't know about you, but this is absolutely terrifying, but I'm gonna need more data for this. At number 6 spot, we have Goat Castle. In the August of 1932, Jane Surgic Muriel, better known as Jenny, was found murdered in her home. She had only purchased the home recently, but friends noticed that the moment she got it, she was showing very strange behavior. Many people consider that she was trying to live a hermit lifestyle. By the way, she only had visits from her cousin and suspected lover, Duncan. Shortly after, the two of them would start to have issues with their neighbor, Richard Dana and Octavia Dockery. So when she was found murdered, the police immediately suspected it to be the neighbors, Richard and Octavia. Except when the police went to the couple's home to ask questions, the mansion was in complete disarray and was a complete disaster. Painting was peeling, windows were broken, holes were in the walls, and the house was infested with insects. As well, the house contained live animals, including a goat, hence the name. Eventually, the couple was cleared for murder and allowed to go back into their home, except they would pass away shortly. Now it's said that if you walk into the home, you can see an apparition who is believed to be Jenny, seeking revenge for her murder. Right in the hump of our list, we have McRaven Tour Home. This place is sometimes called Mississippi's most haunted house, and for very good reason. The McRaven Tour Home, located at 1445 Harrison Street in Vicksburg, once served as a Confederate campsite and a makeshift hospital. Supposedly, at least 11 people have been buried on the property ground. Many witnesses have reported seeing all of the ghosts who have been buried on the property. These ghosts include Mary Elizabeth Howard, who died during childbirth in the house in 1836. During the siege of Vicksburg, McRaven was transformed into a makeshift hospital. According to local legend, John H. Bob caught some Union soldiers tampering with his crops, became enraged and threw a brick at one of them, and seeking revenge, the soldiers returned later, and that night they killed Bob, making him the third resident to die at McRaven, which he can also be seen walking around the home to this day. At number 4 spot, we have the Witch of Yazoo gravesite. In the middle of the old historic Glenwood Cemetery, there's a chain link surrounding a grave known as the Witch's Grave. According to local legend, a witch lived on the Yazoo River shoreline. This witch would lure in fishermen to tease and torture them for later. Eventually, the frequency of attacks increased and law enforcement was quickly involved. They eventually caught on to her ways and chased her through the swamps, where she half drowned in quicksand. As she sank down, she swore her revenge on Yazoo City and the townspeople, saying, quote, "In 20 years I will return and burn this town to the ground." No one thought of it at the time, and then came May 25th, 1904. The fire of 1904 destroyed more than 200 residents and nearly every business in Yazoo City, which is around 324 buildings in total. The witches' graves also has these chains around them, but apparently they need to be replaced constantly since they continue to be broken off. Do you think it's a witch, or is it just some people messing around the cemetery? What do you think? At number 3 spot, we have Witch Dance at Natchez Trace. Staying on the topic of witches, the forest trails of Natchez Trace, located in Tupelo, Mississippi, are said to have been a popular meeting spot for witches back in the day. The sign of the area reads Witch Dance. The very name conjures visions of eerie midnights, swirling back capes, and brooms stacked against a nearby tree. The old folks say the witches once gathered here to dance, and that wherever their feet touched the ground, the glass withered and died, never to grow again. Impossible? Maybe so, but look around. Look for a hidden spot where no grass grows. So basically, when you see dead grass, witches are said to have danced there, and some of these barren or scorched spots of the ground can still be seen to this day. At number 2 spot, we have the Chautauqua Monster. This is basically Mississippi's Bigfoot. So according to the Pike County legend, a circus train was going down the old Illinois Central Railroad, and in a sudden turn of events, it derailed in the swamps near Chautauqua. Except this circus was not like any regular circus. It apparently had many strange critters and creatures on board, one of them being a half man, half ape hybrid, which appeared as a large hairy creature. This creature was very hostile and would attack any person or animal that got too close. So a search party was quickly put together to capture this beast, but they left empty-handed and the monster was never seen again. At number 1 spot, we have Robert Johnson and the Crossroads. This is probably the most original story that related crossroads with selling your soul to the devil. So there's that. So for those who don't know the legend, Robert Johnson was a semi-lackluster guitar player until he decided to journey to the crossroads of Highway 49 and 61 in Clarksdale. This is where he famously made a deal with the devil, where he would sell his soul in exchange for a formidable technique and mastery of the blues. His style did a complete 180, and his style took over jazz with its unique flair. Legend has that 3 of his most hauntingly desperate recordings, Crossroad Blues, Hellhounds on My Trail, and Me and the Devil Blues, are a trilogy of his deal with the devil. And guess how old he is when he died? Yup, 27 years old.